Ah, the Mandela Effect. And no, I'm not talking about the movie, I'm talking about the scientific phenomenon in which a group of people believe something that didn't actually happen. This has been seen a whole host of times throughout history, and even in day-to-day things that we take for granted. Something that someone believes to be true, but just simply isn't. And today we're going to explore this idea further and find out why some of the things you might believe in are complete baloney. I feel like a science teacher, except I get paid way less. In fact, I'm not getting paid anything at all. Hello! Welcome to Brain Spill, the laziest show on the internet. My name is Tank, and the best way to describe in detail what the Mandela Effect actually is to show you a few examples. Movie quotes, for example, are often widely misremembered, in which people quoting that infamous Star Wars line where Darth Vader very clearly says, "Luke, I am your father," the actual line is this.
"No, I am your father."
Yeah, the line that everybody thinks it is not actually true in the slightest. And I'm pretty sure if you asked that question to a room of 100 people, I'd probably say more than half would get it wrong. How about the Monopoly Man with his fine suit, his top hat, and his monocle? Yep, that's right, he never had a monocle. How about Curious George? He had a tail, didn't he? I'm fairly sure he did. Did he? Yes, it's actually very common for these things to occur, where a large group of people misremember a piece of information and basically take it as gospel, to the extent that perhaps even the majority of people believe certain things happened, which is pretty scary when you think about it, as this could all just be one big misunderstanding, and the consequences could be much more dire than that. Writer and researcher Fiona Broome coined the term over a decade ago when she created a website detailing her recollections of former South African President Nelson Mandela, who died in prison in the 1980s. So yeah, now you know where the name comes from. Funny thing about this though, is that Nelson Mandela didn't die in a prison, and he certainly didn't die in the 80s, so what's going on here? After serving 27 years in prison, Mandela became President of South Africa from 1994 to 1999, in which he actually died in the year 2013. 2013? That's certainly a few years after the 1980s, so why did Fiona think that he died in prison in the 80s? Just factually and historically incorrect. She recalled the news at the time covering the story of his death in the 1980s, while still incarcerated, but it wasn't just her, as Fiona found other people who also distinctly remember the same thing, and also recalled such events being reported on national television. Memories are suggestible, and time can be very unreliable, which is why perhaps witness evidence in court trials have been taken with a grain of salt, particularly if there's either a time delay or potentially other factors that may influence someone's memory or recollection of a past event. In one scientific study, scientists were able to effectively implant false memories into test subjects and get them to recall an event that never actually occurred. Yes, even science supports the idea that our memories are not perfect, and as a matter of fact, we can be quite easily influenced to believe something that never actually happened. This is certainly one explanation behind the idea of the Mandela Effect. Other people have a little bit more of a crazy theory on how this whole thing occurs. Some people believe that the Mandela Effect might be a window into an alternate reality. A what-if scenario, should we say. And yes, if you believe that sort of thing, I'm fairly confident that there is an alternate reality where Nelson Mandela died in a prison cell in the 1980s, and perhaps another one where Curious George does have a tail. Two very different examples, but the same principle nonetheless. The one with the most historical and cultural significance I will let you be the judge of. So this is one idea, but there is perhaps a more scientific explanation through a phenomenon called confabulation, the act of spontaneously generating false memories to try and plug the gaps in already existing memories. So, for example, if somebody died a number of years ago, but you can't quite recall when, your recollection may try and fill in the gaps for the information that you don't have, and effectively creating a false memory to try and make sense of this in your own head. This is actually a common symptom of many neurological conditions that affect memory, such as Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia. So it could be perhaps the same principle in cases like this. This is just potentially how our strange brain processes stuff in this crazy world. As to whether this theory can be applied to general knowledge, then who knows, and there is certainly some more scientific tests and study going into this area, but it does seem plausible. And to be honest, out of any theory I've heard today, that's the one that actually sounds like it might have some legs. So yes, if we can figure out how the brain calculates everything in this big strange world, that might certainly explain why many people believe that the Monopoly Man has a monocle on, when in fact, he actually doesn't. Psychology is such a phenomenon that plays a big role too. The idea that memories are misremembered by large groups of people, and it feeds into the idea that, at the very least, it might be more so an idea of conformity than it is any actual perceived difference in memory. Basically, we believe it to be the truth because many other people believe the same thing. Yes, this is perhaps another explanation as to why this happens. I mean, just for example, if one of your best mates comes up to you and says that the Looney Tunes is spelt like this, it's not, it's actually spelt like this, but I imagine most people watching this either didn't know that or just didn't care enough to know the difference. But yes, it's actually spelt like this. So yeah, whatever the reason, this is a real thing, and like I say, there is a lot more research going into this, so I'm hoping we'll be able to discover the secrets in some time in the future. But all I'm going to say for now is that if your best friend tells you to jump off a bridge, maybe don't think it's a good idea and actually think about what you're doing. Just saying. If you guys like that video, here's another one just like it. I'll see you guys in the next video. Fantastic.